Hello there.
We've got a great show lined up for you.
This is Delay of Game.
Yeah! Woo!
A sports talk podcast.
Here comes the pain!
With Ryan Swanigan.
This is when things really got going. Guys who can run around all over the outfield, make catches, and make contact.
And Doug Lowery.
He's visited North Carolina, he's visited Duke, he's visited all those places. We've been told ever since he was a senior in high school that this is the LeBron James of football.
Who are these guys?
Listen and learn.
Welcome in. What is this? What is this box? This is actual. This is not the usual podcast. This gentleman over here is Doug Lowery. I'm Ryan Swanigan. Can you believe this? First of all, Doug, I know you haven't really been able to hear any of the podcasts because you told me you don't do Facebook, but you are doing it this time. Everything is not video. It's all audio. I slap a picture up and that's the podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is my face. Here is Doug Lowery's face, who looks so much better than me. Welcome in, everyone. Glad that you are, I can't believe I'm saying this, able to watch Delay of Game for the first time ever. It has never been watched before until today.
There's probably good reason for that.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think Sports John Kipper might agree, and maybe Cody Broder as well. Two people who I know you haven't listened, but those of you who have heard me ask the question, where is Cody Broder and where is Sports John Kipper? Doug, you and I know exactly where News John Kipper is.
Yeah.
We have no idea where Sports John Kipper has gone to. We have no clue. It's just gone. Totally gone.
I don't even know if Music John Kipper exists anymore.
Oh,
I'm really not sure.
Like, it's all just
news
now.
Just all news.
It's incredible. But anyways.
Proud of him, though.
Yeah, he's, goodness gracious, having a lot of success. He's in Omaha. I'm not going to specify which station just to protect him.
Yep.
But he's doing great. You're doing great, Douglas. I see this this gorgeous background of the beautiful city of Chicago.
Yeah.
And that is where you are stationed. Let's begin the podcast by talking about where you are in Chicago and what you are doing nowadays since you left the great state of Nebraska.
Since I left the great state of Nebraska, that was on December 22nd of 2016. Don't ask me why I remember that. It's a long story. I've been in this apartment since December 14th of last year. I live on Broadway Street, which is a major north-south street on the north side of Chicago. I live about a mile from, if I were to walk up Broadway a mile, I would get to Addison Street, which you know.
Yes, sir.
And if I walk a block over, I catch up on Clark, which goes diagonally up through the city. And so I'm kind of about a mile from Wrigley, between Clark and I'm on Broadway. And I live up in what would be called East Lakeview. I would just tell people Lakeview, but because I'm so close to the lake, which is about a block and a half that way, and then you have to go over Lakeshore Drive, and then it's the lake. So just hanging out. I take the L into work. Since August 4th of 2017, I've been working at Uber Technologies Incorporated, under the umbrella of the Uber Freight business. It's a freight brokerage just like any other. We just kind of use the technology that Uber already has to develop an app that kind of just makes the process a little bit smoother. Been there quite a long time, done about just everything I can do, worn a lot of different hats there. So currently I work as an operations manager as a part of a team that no one would know what I was talking about anyway, but yeah, doing good. Things are good. I've been working from home. Today was day 85 of working from home.
Track.
Yeah, well, I'm the manager over people, and so every day, at the end of the day, I send out an email to say, "Hey, this is what we did. This is, how things are looking. This is what we have to do tomorrow." And so I always start them by dating them. So I say work from home day, whatever, and then the date. And
Nice.
so I think you and I joked about this, that you were like, I don't even know what day it is. And I was like, I have to know what day it is.
Yeah.
I have to know the number date. Like I have to know what day of the month it is. I have to know the day of the week. I have to know everything on every given day, because so much of freight is scheduling and so much of freight is keeping up with a schedule. I joked with you, I use the 24-hour clock, which no one does, but it's just one of those things. I don't think this is an insider trade secret, and I don't think anyone at Uber is going to listen to this to see if I broke my non-disclosure agreement. But back in the early days, in our system, we would just have the 12-hour clock, and you would toggle it AM or PM. And you make the mistake of doing it wrong like 5 times, and not like one person, but like across the business. Like when we were pretty small still, when it was still kind of a startup, when someone makes that mistake and a driver shows up 12 hours late or 12 hours early and you got to pay them a bunch of extra money, you start just using the 24-hour clock. It just becomes easier.
I commend you for that, because I have been working in the news business for so long, working hours that I work while everybody sleeps, as you know, and the 24-hour clock to me is interesting because I only have I get to work when they actually say, when 1:03 is 1:03 a.m.
Yeah.
But like during the day, I'm still struggling. I'm having trouble figuring out the fact that 1,400 hours is 2 o'clock or 1,700 hours is 5 o'clock. Even though I just nailed that right now.
Yeah, you did.
It works weird in my head when it comes to that, but I'm getting better. And, obviously 2,300 hours is 11 o'clock. 0 hours is midnight on. So,
I would say to you and to anyone who wants to learn it, you just got to go full immersion. You got to change your phone, change your computer, change the clock in your car if you can. Just give yourself no excuse but to just have to understand it to comprehend time. Because that's what I did. I just changed every clock in my life to the 24-hour clock, and it got really easy really quick because it was the only way I had to tell time.
For me, it works as something about the number 2. Like if you take off 10 and 2, that's what you get. So like 1,700 hours. So just take the 17 minus 10 and then minus 2, and then you get 5.
Yeah.
Somehow I am able to compute military time that way. I don't know how I've been able to do it. It's been a struggle, but somehow I can now figure it out where all you have to do is 10 and 2. So it's like right now, deal breaker here. This podcast, which you are seeing right now on a Saturday morning, is actually recorded on a Friday night.
Yeah.
You all know that. You know that. My audience should know that. I spilled the beans on that early on in the beginning. But anyways, we are closing in on 2,000 hours.
Yep.
Wait, that's not right.
No, it is. You're right.
No.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah. No, we're closing. It is 20.
It's 2,000 hours.
It's 20:45 right now,
Yep.
and it's going to be 2,100 in about 15 minutes. So that means we're closing in on 9 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
On a Friday night. So there we go. See, it's still hard. I still can't. There's some areas where I can't get it figured out. 9 and 10 o'clock are the difficult part. I don't know why. It just is. Anyways, moving on. You talked a little bit, Doug, about your experiences that with the virus affecting how your work life is going. Just briefly describing mine. I have not stayed home for work ever yet in my career. And certainly not during this coronavirus pandemic. As a lot of you who have listened to the podcast before know, I am a producer. I'm a television producer. I have to be in the building. So other people I work with, they have been working from home for months now. and it's probably driving them crazy. But I'm just still going about the whole thing. Now, it's of course affecting me because every single day I have to compute the numbers, the 24-hour change in numbers for the state of Nebraska and across the country from Johns Hopkins. That's what we use. So other than that, I haven't been affected by COVID-19 in any drastic ways. Of course, you can't go out to eat and sit in a diner. So what? Go to the grocery store, get your food, and cook from home. Everybody's talking about, oh man, I cooked from home for the first time. I'm learning how to cook from home. It's like, great, I already knew how to cook from home.
People used to cook from
years
home
ago.
all the time because it was
Yeah.
just called existing. It was called surviving. Like
That's
you
right.
had to.
I did the same thing. And that's
Yeah.
not a knock on people. It's just kind of like, well, does that mean I'm like ahead of everybody? Some of these things that like people say that they're just learning how to do because of having to stay at home. It's like, so you're telling me I'm ahead of you on this stuff? I never would think I'm somebody who would be ahead of people on, basic life things like cooking from home or whatever. It's just incredible.
It's just a skill that with the proliferation of restaurants, with the proliferation of fast food, it seems the skill of cooking has just suffered in the past 20, 30, 40 years. Like it's really hard to explain, but I don't know if you blame it on restaurants. I don't know if you blame it on at-home dinners that you just microwave, but like people people get intimidated by boiling pasta, and it's like you put water on the stove, you heat it, you put the pasta in, you stir it once. You don't really have to stir it again. You set a timer for 8 minutes and you dump out the water into a strainer and catch the pasta. That's all you have to do.
As a pasta making connoisseur, I can tell you, stirring it once will not.
Yeah,
you have to stir it more than once. Me, it's every 3 minutes. I do keep very good track of that because if I want great pasta and I don't want it to, it will stick to the pot.
Yes.
If you don't stir it, it will stick. So every 3 minutes, I make the best pasta.
But if you're only cooking it for 8 to 9 minutes, you're only stirring it twice. Like it's not that much more than once,
Well, I've cooked pastas that require like 15 minutes. Like that's the extreme for that one type of pasta. But oh my gosh. Anyways, so that's how our lives are going with COVID-19. Let's dive into sports, as that is what you are all waiting for. I know every single time I take like 7 or 8 minutes to get to the meat and bones of the podcast. But we start with
Brian,
go ahead, Doug.
Because I had a thought about listening to many podcasts, especially over this time. Who have you been listening to just at the start? I mean, as we're talking about, I know a lot of different podcasts approach it differently. They'll have like a preview segment where they kind of go over the topics and like give 30 seconds on each thing. And then they'll have an ad break and then they'll get into like the discussion. I've seen it where it's just two guys yamming it up and going back and forth. Like, what have you been listening to while stuck at home? And what is the style that you prefer to listen to? Maybe not what your users are used to, but who have you been listening to?
Well, that's the thing. I haven't been stuck at home.
That's true.
But that's the other thing is I don't really listen to podcasts.
What?
I don't. I go to Facebook and I just watch videos in the Facebook video section, pages I follow. I still follow Colin Cowherd. You know that.
Ryan.
Still following him, listening to his stuff. I'm not, I used to be driving to Papillion for a couple of years. So that's when I would listen to podcasts, is on my drive to and from Papillion, when I would go up and work for the Omaha Storm Chasers baseball team as a camera operator for 2 years. I did that. And so driving up there, I listened to Colin Cowherd, best of his podcast on the way up there. And then on the way back down, I would I don't know, listen to whatever. Usually at that point, I'm on my way to my full-time job. So it's like, that's ever since, that's it. Like, I don't listen to podcasts really at all. It's all YouTube videos or Facebook videos. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Douglas,
you're
but
good.
that's what it is for me.
You got to remember though, when I first moved back, I was living out in the suburbs. And so when I got the job at Uber, I had to take the train in every day, and the train took 40 minutes. So I had an hour and 20 minutes of time that I had to kill with something, and I had to be quiet so I could wear headphones. So it was either music, and I've gotten much more into music. John would be very impressed.
Yes.
Like just tiny little bands that no one's ever heard of. And I don't try to do it in like the ironic hipstery way, but the other thing was podcasts. And for a long time, it was The Bottom Line with Michael Severe.
Yes.
Because it was at the Omaha World Herald. They always had the writers on. I had subscribed to the Omaha World Herald sports section at that point, so I could read the articles, then listen to them, discuss them. I have a lot of respect for Sam McEwen, Dirk Chatlin. I like Chris Hetty a bunch and the way he covers the basketball team.
Oh yes, Chris Hetty, great man.
So that's where I got my big start on Husker stuff. And then since the Bottom Line ended, Michael and Damon are back together. And so I'll listen to segments they have. Like they'll have Sam McEwen on once a week. They have Sipple on once a week. So I'll listen to that. But you can just pull those segments right out of Apple Podcasts. And then the other two would be the Pick Six podcast, which is the Omaha World Herald podcast with Sam, Evan Bland, and Chris Hetty. And then the Nick Baugh podcast. If you guys don't know the Nick Baugh podcast, Nick Baugh, man, that's been my guy. I've ridden with Nick since his very first podcast. So been a big fan of his.
I've been a fan of Nick Baugh since like way before a lot of people knew about him, when he was still at 1620 The Zone. That was like 20.
Don't make the man sound old, Ryan. Don't
2014 probably.
Hey, shout out to Nick Baugh. He just had his second kid.
Oh man, that man is an amazing man. He's so awesome. He's so good. He's a great father. He's just great at everything.
Well, he's also good at podcasting. And if I can't push you or stress you enough, and to your listeners, if you're going to listen to anything besides Delay of Game, go listen to the Nick Baugh podcast.
Without a doubt.
He has the linebacker coach at Nebraska is Barrett Ruud, the former Husker. Barrett's brother Bo was also a linebacker at Nebraska, and Nick and the Ruuds are very good friends. And so he'll have Bo on once a week during the season to talk about the game that had just happened. Well, the interesting thing is he's not like a radio station, so he can record it whenever because he just records at home. So after Husker game days this past season, I found his analysis was the first I could get myself in front of, unless I listened to a reaction show, because he would wake up the next day and record the podcast and put it out on Sunday night. So I could sit there Sunday night listening to a podcast of Husker people talking about the Husker game and not have it be an immediate reaction, kind of give it that sleep on it, day worth of reflection. So those would be my big three. Beyond that, it's all just soccer stuff, but we're going to get into that shortly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, getting into the sports side, you apparently are like following pretty heavily European soccer. I think you name dropped Arsenal, which is like the only team that I vaguely follow, and vaguely at that. In getting back to the coronavirus pandemic, of course, everybody who's listening to the podcast to this point knows that has been the dominating talking point on this show. Is this pandemic is affecting everything in sports, and now we're seeing everybody try and come back to it. The PGA Tour is holding another event this weekend. It's going on right now. Tiger Woods is a part of it. But in Europe, an aspect that I haven't covered well, because, like I said, I don't follow that. I just know it's going on. They're playing games. You follow that, Doug. What are you seeing? How are they handling this pandemic? How is this all going on for them, from UEFA to the EPL, whatever? Like, they've got I don't know how many leagues they got over there, but they're all underway.
So yeah, it's hard to describe. Hi mom, I'm going to name drop you. Because I know she's listening. So I've tried
watching today, Doug.
correct.
Yes.
I've tried to describe this to her on several occasions and to many other people that just don't get it. But they have like an MLB tier system. So like first, MLB, AAA, AA, single A. They have that through like 20 divisions in every country. And so it's the Premier League is what it is in England, but
Right.
in Spain it's La Liga, in France it's Liga, in Germany it's the Bundesliga, and in Italy the 5 big ones. So England, Italy, France, Germany, and Spain.
Yeah.
And Italy is Serie A. They've all come back. They're all playing games now. It actually all shut down because of Arsenal. So I actually pulled this up. So I'm going to be looking over here for a second. Arsenal played in the Europa League, which is the secondary European competition, on February the 27th of this year. They lost 2-1 to get knocked out of the Europa League to Olympiacos. And at the 27th of February, obviously coronavirus was well known, but I don't think it was taking over, I believe, Italy at that point. It was pretty strong in Italy. But at that point, soccer hadn't really talked about shutting down. It was just precautions. Hey, we're going to do these things. And on the 27th of February, the owner and the president of Olympiacos flew with the team to London, and he was up in the booths, up in the suites, down on the field, meeting a bunch of people. And 2 days after the game, it turned out that he tested positive. So then you fast forward, I got to do math. Was this a leap year? It was a leap year, right?
It was a leap year, yes.
So
we had the 29th.
14 days later, on the 12th of March, the head coach for Arsenal, the newly appointed head coach in December for Arsenal, Mikel Arteta, actually got diagnosed positive with the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
And on March 13th, the EPL shut down. They said, we're done. We're stopping. We'll come back in April. At the time, they said we'll come back April 3rd. About the last week of March, that became April 30th. And come on, go to the next page. Technology doesn't want to play along.
That's slow.
So they extended it to the 30th, and then they went back out again. And eventually, play resumed on June 17th, oddly enough, with Arsenal playing versus Manchester City, who were last year's champions. They got thrashed 3-0, but everyone expected that. So since then, it's basically they have a match every 3 to 4 days. They have, depending on the schedule and the way it sets up, it's either Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, or Sunday, Thursday, Sunday. And we're going to get a heck of a show down the last, I think, 5 match days of the season. And then they'll get about a month and a half off, and the next season will start.
It's incredible just to see how everything – you started throwing off dates in March, and that, of course, made me think to the night that I came home from my part-time job. I sat down. I thought it would just be another night of, I'm going to get home, I'm going to eat, delivery. So I don't know if I am now. I have to check in, but I was a delivery driver for Panera. I'd get food from there every night. I'd come home. I'd watch the NBA, take a short nap, go into the full-time job. That night was the last night that I had that regular schedule of coming home with my Panera, sitting down, watching the NBA, and then all of a sudden I flip it on, and the only thing going on right at that time was Dallas and who were they playing? I can't remember who they were playing, but the game was in Dallas. ESPN was like doing literally as this basketball game is going on, they are going back and forth between Dallas and Bristol headquarters with Scott Van Pelt talking about what had just happened in Oklahoma City, how a doctor had run onto the court and, in essence, shut the whole thing down. And that, to me, was shocking. And that right there was the start of like, oh my gosh, this stuff is that serious. It is that serious that we have to do that.
It's right around that same time, and I know we're going to get to Husker basketball later, but it was March 11th when the Huskers played Minnesota in Indianapolis, and Fred Hoiberg got taken off the court. The next day is when Mikel Arteta got tested positive for coronavirus, and the EPL shut down. So, like, this all happened surprisingly at a very similar time.
It was right in that week of, I'm guessing this had to be March. I keep thinking it was March 8th, but that first week of March. And then, of course, you know, as a television producer, I have to go in the next day. And of course, like, I started my show off with like, hey, this is continuing breaking news, because guess what? The NBA is shut down, and now the NCAA might be in trouble. And this virus is affecting everybody nationally. And it just got more and more interesting that night, because I know you don't watch a lot of NBA. I just remember this because this is one of those rare nights where I did not take a nap before I went into work because I couldn't stop watching this. Like, this was, this is one of those moments that you're watching on ESPN that is completely captivating. It's like the Joe Paterno, Penn State, Jerry Sandusky stuff in 2010, 2011, whenever that happened. You just couldn't stop watching it on ESPN. And this was another one of those things where it starts off with the breaking news out of Oklahoma City. The NBA lets Dallas finish their game there, the Mavericks, and I still can't remember who they were playing. And then there's word that the NBA season has been suspended, like right then and there. After that night? But then the NBA was like, "No, forget it. We're just canceling the rest of the night." Like the first set of games finished, and then the secondary games that were like out on the West Coast, Sacramento and New Orleans. That was the next game to air on ESPN, and they were like, we have no idea what's going on. There's some fans here, but we have no clue what's going on. The officials have returned to the locker room. And then finally the NBA made the announcement like, nope, it's totally canceled.
Who does Rudy Gobert play for? Doesn't he play for Utah?
Yes.
So it would have been Utah.
Oh, yes.
Because he wiped all the phones with his hands, and then the next day or whatever, he found out he was positive with it.
Yep. That's right. Oh, my gosh. Crazy, crazy times. But as you mentioned, and as we still are here right now, the pandemic is still, I would say, we are back where we were.
Ryan, I'm far worse off than y'all have ever been.
What do you mean?
Well, because I'm in a high density population area. Yeah, I mean, like, it's worse for me inherently. Not to say that Nebraskans have it easy, but
when I say we, I think of the country as a whole. And again, everything that I base what I say off of comes from the daily numbers that I see from Johns Hopkins. For the 24-hour period from Thursday into Friday morning, we had over 60,000 new cases, just under 63,000 new cases of the coronavirus in this country for a 24-hour period. I would say we are absolutely 110% where we were at the end of March, and yet
now the question for me, Ryan, is do we consider them new cases or do we consider them positive results? Because I would like a positive result could come on day 4, could come on day 10, could come on day 8. I don't think it's a new case of the coronavirus. It's just a confirmed case, if you ask me.
That's a good point.
The semantics of the word new don't do it for me, because it sounds like it's sprouted in that person so that they have this thing that, like, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, no, but when I say new, it's like they have the virus. Like that is a new
Yes.
case. Like that person is, they are. I don't know how to properly describe this because I've got three different thoughts going into my head about.
I think
But you know what I mean?
I think we mix ours. We say a new confirmed case.
Yeah, that's
55,000 new confirmed cases.
exactly, and
Yes.
that's what I try to make sure I have go out on the air is like, these are the new confirmed cases for this 24-hour time frame. And when I say that, then that's people who have contracted the virus and who have tested positive for the
Right.
virus.
Right.
Not, of course, now people recover from it. Unfortunately, we also have, probably today we're closing in, or if not past the 134,000 mark in terms of coronavirus fatalities. So that's where we are with those, and that's what either ends up being the result. You have it, and then you can recover from it, or you die from it, unfortunately. And so,
Well,
as
Ryan,
it stands now,
that
more people recover, but
in
there are
fairness,
also people dying.
in fairness, and this is not to make light of it, that's any illness. You either recover or you
Of
don't.
course, yeah.
So it's not that those are like the exclusive options of the coronavirus. That's
Right.
any general illness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the one fascinating bit is all of the studies that are showing the way the virus is mutating is what I find interesting. Like in
Yes.
Houston, they have their own mutation. Apparently Chicago has its own mutation. And they can like look at the viruses and find these genetic markers, or maybe not genetic, the markers in the virus, because
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And they can like attribute an area to certain markers in the virus and watching it getting passed on. That's been really interesting to me. And the super spreader versus asymptomatic difference is very interesting, because there's the case in either Washington or Oregon where like that church choir got like wiped out, and it was because there was one super spreader in the group. And then you'll have cases where like 3 people in a nuclear family of 7 are all testing positive. They're still living with those 4 people, and the other 4 people don't get sick.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just baffling, this virus. And it's not baffling in a good way, unfortunately, but it's just it's incredibly interesting if you find things like that interesting.
Yeah. It's shocking how different it is. And unfortunately, it's also shocking in the manner that we are how we are just we don't give a rip anymore about it. We just are. We're tired of quarantining. We're tired of wearing masks. We're tired of this and tired of that. It's like, that's great. Guess who's not tired of it? The virus itself. Yeah. It does not give a hoot about anything that we care about. Like it doesn't care about what we care about. Like it's just going right along. And we are, as you said, we are desperately trying to study this thing and figure it out and understand what in the world is going on with this. And it's just, I don't believe that we are giving enough effort into supporting the people who need to be studying this and trying to come up with a proper way to combat it. And
I think we're giving them plenty of support. I think there's been more money raised and more money donated than either of I probably,
hope
you
you're
or
right.
I understand.
I hope you're right.
I would feel very strongly that there's plenty of money being thrown at research for this, and that plenty of institutions of higher learning and medical institutions are doing everything they can.
Now that is, when you say medical institutions and universities and stuff, yes, they are pouring so much into trying to figure this out and trying to beat it. But it's, I guess, when I say what I just said, I'm more referring to, the basics of life.
And sanitizer, Ryan.
Sanitizer, wash your hands, wear a mask, social distance, list it off. It's just like, but again, I also understand that we're tired of it. I get it, Doug. I get it. I'm tired of it too.
See, that's the thing though, is I have
stop.
I have a sport back, and I'm going to bring it back to soccer. Is I have a sport back, so like 3 times a week, I have a
I do
channel to
too.
turn to, and I get to watch sports, and it's something I care about deeply. I think it helps me more than anything just to be able to unwind and unlock my brain from, because for so long during the social distancing and the shutdown here, especially, I mean, the first 2 or 3 weeks was like, it was just, it looked post-apocalyptic.
You
on the
couldn't
streets.
believe that this was going on because there was absolutely zero sports going on, and nobody
Right.
wanted to watch reruns of great things that they had already seen.
And everything had just shut down. And I mean, there were coyotes walking in the streets of Chicago. Like, it was just bizarre.
Yeah,
Like,
same
just
here.
really, really weird. But it's almost like you realize initially, like, okay, we got to do this thing, and then things get to come back. And then you get through 3 or 4 weeks of like being stuck in your place and not going to see anyone. I haven't seen my parents since this all started. I mean, they're an at-risk age group. No offense, Mom. And I'm just scared to death to go see them because it's just a scary thought. I get to see them on the 21st of this month, which will be the first time since I think February.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
But
rough.
to go back to sports, I think that's the one thing that has helped me is I am a staunch Arsenal follower. Of the teams I follow, I try to watch every game I can. But the funny thing about Arsenal is, and this is one of the reasons I try to get people into watching soccer, is because it's on when nothing else is on. It's on at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the morning.
Yeah.
Like I've woken up
why
at 6
NBC
in the
picked
morning.
it up.
Right. I've woken up at 6 in the morning to watch soccer. Like, that's just the truth of the matter. It's a tidy 2 hours because it's 2 45-minute running clock halves, and you're done. That's all it has to be. And I've just, it's brought so much back to me. It just getting to listen to the podcast between games and getting to read articles and just every last bit of it, because the Huskers ain't giving it to me right now. As you said earlier before we started this up, like I said, hey, Ryan, you want to talk recruiting? And I know you have a policy on that, but like nothing else is really going on with the Huskers. There's not a whole bunch to talk about.
I wouldn't say a policy. It's my own personal belief, which I have expressed a couple of times, both in this current period of Delay of Game, the podcast, and in previous years when we were on KRNU.
Yeah.
Do
it on the field first.
I don't believe I like, you guys can talk about recruiting all you want. Yes, this is a Jeff Gordon notepad, by the way. This thing is old. I don't care about recruiting. I want to see results that actually mean something. Adrian Martinez getting something done in the field. Divine Ozigbo getting something done in the field. Who was talking about Divine Ozigbo being recruited a couple of years ago? Nobody was.
From Saxe, Texas, I was.
No, yeah, you were because you follow it so closely. But everybody said, oh, yeah, we got this guy, Divine Ozigbo. We're talking about somebody else. That's what we were talking about. And all of a sudden, Divine Ozigbo, boom, here he is. Nobody was talking about him. And that's the same way that it goes for all football players. And since we're just sticking with football, that's how it goes. That's always how it goes.
My argument would be that since Scott Frost has signed on to be head coach, and since he brought his assistants, his system is demanding of certain types of athletes. We knew that was going to happen. And it's just interesting to me to see the profile of athletes they are attempting to recruit. I don't think it's interesting to know, hey, they sent them a letter today. Hey, they stopped by this high school today. None of that really matters. I think the interesting thing is, oh, we're going after another 6'7" offensive lineman. Oh, we're going after another 6'6" defensive lineman. Oh, we're going after another 6'1", 180-pound, fast as all could be inside linebacker. Like, it's interesting to me to see, as they're building the roster, which they're doing through youth, because the team is 60 to 70% underclassmen, or people that Scott Frost himself and his staff have signed. It's just interesting to see, if I'm going to be imagining Because that's the thing right now with the Huskers, right? Is like, we know this is a 5-year project. So if I'm trying to picture what the 5th year looks like, then knowing who we're recruiting and
Yeah.
what their body type is and what they're potentially going to fulfill as a role, I think is just, I don't follow recruiting because I like recruiting. I follow recruiting because I like the overall picture it gives you for everything else that's going to go on in the program. Because
Or that's supposed to go on.
yeah, absolutely.
least.
It's all
That's-
prognostication.
Oh yeah, and it's so funny that you say that you think it's interesting to hear you say that you think that this whole process for Nebraska, as it stands right now, is a 5-year process. Because I
It's
remember
a 7-year process, right?
Yeah, I remember when we were on KRNU, and we had the breaking news that Mike Riley got hired. Brent Bonfleur said specifically that this is a 3-year outlook for Mike Riley. He has 3 years, and by his 3rd year, that's what we're gonna get. Like, that's what we're gonna see. And sure enough, Brent Bonfleur nailing it.
Yeah.
Mike Riley was done. Sean Eichhorst had been fired. It was over. And so that's what I think is so interesting when you say you're giving Scott Frost 5 to 7 years. I don't think anybody really has thought about a time frame for Frost, especially nowadays, because it seems like the amount of time that head coaches get in college football or in the NFL to take what they have right now and make it successful, that window of opportunity, that year, just shrinks. It gets less and less and less. And now we're like, good grief, look at there's some NFL coaches who have been
1 year.
Yeah, 1 year and they're done. Like that's it.
And I think that's interesting, especially, and your best friend Colin Cowherd was talking about Scott Frost yesterday.
I did see that. Yeah,
he had his name in his mouth, and he was saying, "Oh, Scott's got to get it together," blah blah blah. But they're not going to fire him because Nebraska's a 3rd-rate program. Here's the thing. Well, Colin can say what he wants. He gets paid to be inflammatory. He hasn't
been in Nebraska in forever, so he doesn't know what goes on here.
Yeah. Well, and
it's about knowing about your location before you actually say something about it.
And that's the interesting thing to me is, number one, who are you going to find that's better, that's willing to come if you fire the golden boy who won the national championship as the quarterback?
If you can't hold on to a former Husker quarterback who was, part of 2 national titles, you can't hire anybody. You can't.
Right.
It's like that's how simple that boils down to.
Yeah, and it totally agreed. And I think the thing you got to think about is when Mike Riley gets fired, that was the same time the AD got fired. And so when you think about an AD, nobody liked Eichhorst. Like everyone in revisionist history, anyone who defended him back in the day has switched their stance to now go back and revise what they think and say, "Oh, I never liked him in the first place."
But you and I and probably John Kipper and a couple of other people when we were at KRNU, we were like, there are a couple of red flags here. For the one that sticks out to me, only 1 year of real athletic director experience at Miami. Well, 1 year, he had no other previous years.
I'm not here to talk Sean Eichhorst in the Eichhorst. I'm not here to talk about him. The basic idea I had was, if you think about it, every athletic department is going to follow the vision of the athletic director. And Eichhorst was given the provision, hey, if you're going to fire Bo Pelini, you got to go get someone who's going to win. And he was doing it his way. They fire Eichhorst. They bring in Dave Remington in the interim, and then they bring in everyone's favorite, Bill Moos. I don't know anyone who doesn't like Bill Moos.
Same.
I love him. There's something about the guy that I admire.
He has a way of talking to you and making you believe him, and he feels like somebody you can have forever conversations with, kind of like yourself, Douglas.
But he's also one of those guys that understands that winners win, and that if you're going to be a winner, you have to win games before you can call yourself a winner.
That's right.
And so he's just kind of a no BS kind of guy in that way. And I think he has a really good grasp of exactly where this football program was, what it had been made under Mike Riley, and if it was going to be winners winning, what it would need for a runway to ramp up and take off.
That's right.
And the thing is, you have to build winners. This is a saying I heard on one of my soccer podcasts. The confidence takes the elevator down and the stairs back up. And so that's the case we're in right now, right? You hear, for me, it's the larger narrative of what's going on, right? And so Scott Frost gets here. He's a little fiery in his opening press conference. Oh, I hope they have to change their system for us and all that. And he got the hoots and hollers from the crowd. And that was good. But what I like listening to is, like, if you listen to Frost after a loss, like the post-game press conference, I think that's where you're hearing who he is and the leader he is. Because the way he talks about not even accepting defeat, but just dealing with defeat, and the way he talks about trying to make the changes necessary, it is very analytical in its approach. It's very, very measured in its approach. I've heard Sam McEwen talked about this, but Scott is an incredibly, and we call him Scott to this point. That's the funniest thing to me.
Yeah.
Mr. Frost, Scott is an incredibly intelligent person, and people don't give him enough credit for that. But it's his vision. It's the fact that he hired a chief of staff, which I think is the smartest thing anyone's ever done in a football program of that many people, is to have a secondary leader who's a non-football person. I think that's genius. It's the way it's all getting set up, and they're trying to teach the kids they're bringing in now how to win, to make them winners, and then winners continue to win. That's just how it works. You go to Alabama, you go to Clemson, you go to Ohio State, you go to these models, and I remember hearing Eddie Jackson talk about it, who's a safety for the Bears here in Chicago. He said, when I got to Alabama, the choices were work hard and become a starter or don't play. And he said, I just had to work harder than 8 other guys.
That's right.
And then once you start playing, you have to protect your spot on the field by performing.
Work hard to get there, and then keep working harder to maintain it.
Absolutely. But the fun thing about places like Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State and hopefully Nebraska is that the guy who's the starter is still cheering for the guy who's second place and third place. And he wants them, hey, come on, keep trying to take my job, because all of us get better when that happens. And that's the winning mentality that I have no ill will towards Mike Riley. He did not ask for the position. He did not seek it out. Someone sought him out and thought he would be good for it. I'm sorry. If someone came to you, Ryan, and said, hey, do you want this $2 million a year job? And if after 3 years we don't think you're doing a good job, we'll fire you. You would say, yeah, if you're going to give me 3 years to mess it all up and get paid $2 million a year to do it, yeah, I'll do it. Like, it's not that I don't blame him in the slightest, but he just doesn't build that kind of a mentality of a culture. And it's a very pervasive culture in business as well. I'm not going to speak too much about my individual workplace, but I know that kind of a mentality is the structure of it, the mentality of team first, team building, of constant innovation, constant striving to be in the forefront. That is a very, I don't want to say 21st century, but it's like it's the past 15, 20 years. It's just this like way of life that has just grown and grown and grown and grown and grown, of just building and building and building upon excellence. And all the best companies do it. All the best teams do it. You'll have one-off teams that'll win a thing, something here or there. Leicester City in the English Premier League in 2015. A football team here or there. My Bears made it to a Super Bowl in the past 20 years. God knows why that happened, but it did. But the teams that continuously succeed, the Patriots, the Alabama Crimson Tide, Clemson, Nebraska women's volleyball.
Yes,
because I've interviewed John Cook, and the way he speaks is the same way Scott speaks, and it's interesting because they talk about how good of friends John Cook and Scott Frost are, and it makes sense to me. And so that's where I get my comfort with this team, is knowing that is the leadership it is falling under. Now, In 4 or 5 more years, could we be exactly where we are? Maybe. We don't know. We have no way to know. We really don't. But in 4 to 5 years, do I think that's where we're going to be, knowing who's in charge of the program? No.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't believe that Scott Frost is in trouble. Like, I don't. Because again, this is all based on the fans. The fans have about 60 to 70% of the say of who coaches Nebraska. And who were they on board with before they hired Mike Riley? Scott Frost. After they hired Mike Riley, Scott Frost. After Mike Riley got fired, Scott Frost. It was, everybody knew, we want Scott Frost. And now he's here. And now Nebraska fans can accept the fact that, yeah, we're in a bad spot. It's going to take a little bit to rebuild. It is not going to be like Alabama, like Clemson, like Ohio State, like Florida, like all these other places and these teams that are in the the New Year's Six or the Final Four for the college football playoff. Like, it's not immediate. And that's the thing that drives me nuts is Nebraska fans they get that, but they don't accept it when somebody other than Scott Frost is hired for the job. Like, they expected that with Mike Riley. It didn't happen. They lost it. Now Scott Frost is in. It's like, oh, we understand it now. Like, no, you just didn't want to understand it when somebody else who doesn't have ties to the football program itself took the job.
Yeah, but
like that's where it came for me.
Yeah, but you have to think, like, if you think even where Riley was after season 2 and where Frost left off after season 2, the narrative in Lincoln, not the national narrative, but the narrative in Lincoln was still pointing up for Frost.
Yes.
And at the end of year 2, it was
looking
pointing down
yes,
for Riley.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's very, for me, as someone who has followed the program as closely as anyone not a journalist since 2009 when I enrolled, the narrative around the overall story of Husker football is tracking upwards. Now, under Bo, it was kind of status quo. Can they maintain this?
So like a straight line.
Right. Under Riley, it was dipping down. It's like, oh, can they fix this? And now it's coming up, but it's going to take a minute. And I think people understand that. The thing that's interesting to me is they always say what the vocal minority makes up for what we all hear from what the fans think, right? Like
the minority is the louder voice.
Right. There's like 10% of fans that make the most noise, and that's what all the news stations, no offense, that's what all the radio stations, the sports networks, that's what they all say. Oh, the fans think this, but it's really only that tiny chunk.
Yes, it's the minority making the loudest noise in the whole spectrum of the conversation.
Now, tell me if you jive with this thought. If at the end of not this coming football season, because he's not going to get fired after, no matter what happens this season, there's no chance. But say they go 5-8 again, 5-7.
It's funny that you're saying that.
Hold on.
Schedule, but yes.
So say they go 5-7 2 years from now. I think if the vocal 10% somehow got Scott fired, the other 90% would become the vocal percent. Yes. And they would scream those people down if there was ever any hint that it was a real possibility. To say, y'all, take a seat, we're going to handle this, keep Scott in place, let him keep doing it. Because I just don't see the silent majority of Nebraska fans, of which I'm sure there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, wanting him to go at any point in the very near future.
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. Because the thing about it is he is born and raised a Nebraskan.
Wood River.
Just like Frank Solich, just like Tom Osborne, they're all born and raised Nebraskans.
Have you noticed that Scott loves bringing up the Lou Platte Conference?
I've never noticed this. No.
Okay, I've because I'll listen to as a trained journalist, which I will say I am because you witnessed me getting the training. As a trained journalist, I do prefer to listen to unedited press conferences
Oh yeah, so do
because
I.
I think it's just better for gathering what they're actually saying. And then if you go and read like analysis in the form of articles, or if you listen to radio, it's kind of getting um, the whole piece and then seeing it broken down. And I think that helps me to not snap judge things and not be one of those wishy-washy fans like, oh, Frost sucks, he's not good anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it helps me from straying in that direction. But and hi, Mom. Her and I have both noticed because he'll bring it up. He's brought it up like in his 2 years. He's brought it up like 4 or 5 times. He'll be talking about like a walk on. He'd be like, "Oh, he's from the Loup Platte. Oh, he's from that out in the Loup Platte, Wood River." And it's just like constantly. I think he just likes saying it and bringing it up because it's where he's from, obviously. But it just tickles me for some reason that just
That's
constantly
great.
of all the places of all the sports conference, high school sports conferences in Nebraska. Scott's bringing up the Loup Platte as much as possible.
That's right. He's taking advantage of it and letting them know that, hey, I still know about you people, and I like you guys are still with me. And also, also I'm from there too, in case you guys need a background
Who's
refresher on that.
the quarterback kid, the quarterback recruit from in-state, Heinrich Harburg? It's from Kearney. I don't think that's in the Loup Platte, but he's from out that way.
There's another one too from this is from a couple of years ago.
Braden Miller.
From
Matt Masker.
No, from York. Steinkooler. Baker Steinkooler.
Baker Steinkooler is from Lincoln, brother.
No, that's not. Then I'm not thinking. No, he's not from Lincoln. He's from.
I would bet you $1,000
No.
Baker Steinkooler is from Lincoln. I think he went to Southwest.
No. He went to.
There's people watching this podcast right now.
So are going nuts. I know. I have
the.
I tell this to those who listen all the time. Steinkooler is from out west.
You're thinking of Jared Crick from Kozak.
No. I'm thinking of like a very recent.
You're wrong.
A very recent high school quarterback.
Baker Stein.
Aurora. He's from Aurora. Yes.
Who are you talking about?
You don't know who Baker Steinkooler is?
Baker Steinkooler was a 6'6" tall offensive tackle from Lincoln Southwest. I'm looking at his rivals page right now. You've got the wrong person.
I've got the wrong. Who's the quarterback from?
Do you mean
Aurora?
Riker? Do you mean Riker Fife?
No, not Riker Fife. I'm talking about.
Who are you talking about?
Hold on. I'm looking at the Nebraska roster now.
He had to have been a walk-on.
Probably was, but he was an excellent quarterback. Excellent quarterback. I'm gonna find him. Give me a minute. I apologize to those of you at home who are watching.
Ryan, you can edit this part out, right?
I could, but I usually don't. I just leave it as it is.
We apologize.
Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. There's also the quarterback who was at.
I know. Ty, what's his name? Steinkooler. Ty something is the quarterback. Yeah, it is.
There's a quarterback at York who also was also good too. Kevin Suits, if you're watching this, I am so sorry because I know we have had numerous conversations about this dude's father. And it's, oh my gosh, this is.
I'm very
Garrett Snodgrass. Yes, there it is.
Garrett Snodgrass plays middle linebacker.
I know he does, but he was a great quarterback out of York.
He played running back.
No, it wasn't. He was a quarterback.
He played fullback and tight end and inside linebacker.
No. Garrett Snodgrass was a quarterback at York. Douglas, don't argue with me. I hosted a show for a year that was nothing but high school football every Friday night. Garrett Snodgrass at York leading the way, and maybe not Baker Steinkooler. I'm mixing that up with another name, and I have to find the name.
Ethan Piper? Who are you looking for
No, he was out of Aurora. Yeah, this is like within the last couple of years, in the last 2 years.
Ryan.
He's
Ugh.
out of Aurora. He was out of Aurora. He led Aurora to an
Excuse me.
undefeated season, Class C title
At quarterback?
at quarterback for
Pla-
Aurora.
Playing for the Huskers now.
Yes, either that or he's a quarterback up at South Dakota State, maybe. Oh, this is so bad. This is so bad. I have to. Why do I think South Dakota State is
Okay,
where he went?
we've got to reel this back in. We've got to get the slack back,
But
and
we
we've got
have to
to.
get the answer.
No, we don't.
Yes,
we really
do.
don't.
We
People aren't
must
going to
get
care.
this answer.
Ryan, it's bothering you, and it's bothering no one else. Let's
Oh my
keep
gosh.
it. Let's keep it rolling. Let's keep it funky.
Oh boy.
We're at almost an hour right now, and
since
20
we
minutes of
are,
that has been hemming and hawing.
Since we are on the discussion then of Husker football, and you alluded to it, you're talking about this upcoming season.
Yes, sir.
I'm skeptical. I don't know if you're skeptical, but just this past Thursday, the Big Ten saying there will be no such thing as Nebraska football outside of the Big Ten Conference. Doug,
Yep.
I want to gauge your thoughts on that since we're on the subject. Fire away.
As long
What
as
do you
I
got?
get football, I don't really care. Like,
Of course.
it's one of those things. I thought of 1,000 different ways it could go, right? So, like, what if they played 8 games and then, the coronavirus kicked back up and they canceled the rest of the season? Would they play more in the spring? I thought, well, what if they only played in the spring and then the following year they made that like a freshman or a JV league, right?
Right.
Because you've got 160 kids on the team and only 22 get to play at a time. So if there's going to be need for college football, if there's going to be need for another, a sport to generate more revenue to make up for what's gone on, I thought, what if they did that? So it would make sense if they did it in the spring and then they had it football again in the fall and then again in the spring, if they just made it varsity and JV. And there would have to be some sort of rules about if you played so many minutes in the fall, you can't participate in the spring. The spring is more of a developmental season. But I thought, man, that'd be smart, because then you'd be making, 1.5 times as much money, 2 times as much money a year on your biggest revenue generating sport. And so, through the months, I mean, again, as we talked about, we've been doing this for 85 work days. So if you count in the weekend days, we're at more than 100 days of social distancing at this time. And that's plenty of time to come up with as many scenarios you want for how to play football. I don't mind the all Big Ten scenario. I'm with Frost that there has to be some consideration for, not doing it 10 weeks back to back to back all in a row, because you're just going to have dudes just barely able to lift their arms trying to go out there and play offensive line. Because
as good of prep as it will be for the NFL, you're right, though.
It's a crazy thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with all the protocol they're going to have to be under, all the extra testing, everything in life is going to be, when we all start returning to work, when we all start returning to normal day-to-day life, everything becomes just 1% more difficult or takes 1% longer time. And so in all of that, do we really want to do back to back games? So I'm with Frost on that one. Is we're going to have to figure something out, because this is going to be real warfare. Like, this is going to be young men just throwing their bodies at this.
As the schedule, quickly to update those of you at home. By the way, fun fact, 2 things about the schedule. So Nebraska, with its changes, eliminating these 3 teams and making it only Big Ten, they just eliminated 3 weekends in a row of Husker football. Those included Saturday, September 12th against Central Michigan, Saturday, September 19th against South Dakota State, and Saturday, September 26th, hosting Cincinnati. All 3 of those games were at Memorial Stadium. That was 4 home games in a row. The whole month of September, we get Husker football. Now, Nebraska only has 1 game as it stands in September. That's against Purdue. The next one is an entire month later, taking on Northwestern. That is their first road game. So you go now, of course, this is just as the schedule stands right now. This is not a guaranteed set
Right.
schedule. They could add more games. They could change the dates for these games and schedule bye weeks in between. But that's where we are at right now. Those are the teams we lose. And second of all, interesting tidbit here, this is the first year, Douglas, that Nebraska does not play Iowa the day after Thanksgiving.
Well, we don't know if there's going to be games going on at that point in the season
Exactly,
anyway.
yeah. Just
So-
as it stands right now, as the schedule is,
Yeah.
the first year, and of course, everybody was in an uproar about, oh, you can't make Nebraska not play Iowa the day after Thanksgiving. Minnesota's not a rivalry. Like, okay, well, 2022,
Yeah.
there you go. But we might have a change. We'll see what happens. But,
Yeah, our good friend Bill Moose, friend of the program.
Well,
I
don't know about that.
I think he was on. I don't know if he only spoke to the Lincoln Journal Star or if that's just where I caught this tidbit. But he was saying they want to move the games around so that the Big Ten West foes are in the middle of the schedule. So if they have to push back the start and they lose some games at the start, they're good. And if they have to push back or pull back, pull up the ending of the season because of any kind of a resurgence, that kind of those insulated games in the middle of the season would be the Big Ten West opponents.
Well, if you still believe in a resurgence later this year, then what in the world are we in right now?
Yeah, well,
I still say we're
sort
in
of-
part 2 of wave 1. That's what I'm saying. But
yeah, the thing is, I don't think anyone really knows.
yeah. At this point, the only thing we do know, it's still around. It's still very serious.
Yeah.
And we're not doing enough to combat it. But anyway.
Yeah, but that's the thing. And I think a point that I've heard made is, are these young men safer on campus practicing with each other than they would be if they didn't have football to compete in? Because kids are going to be kids and they're going to go out and they're going to go mingle with their friends anyway. And at least if you have them with each other and you're testing them all the time, you know where they are and you know who they've been around. Whereas, say I'm just going to pick a guy at random. Ethan Piper, if you send him back to Norfolk and he's going to hang out with his buddies who are all doing college from home too, and then they end up at someone's lake house and then someone who had it there, there's just harder ways to trace it.
Mhm.
It's very interesting to me. But the interesting thing, and this is going to kind of bring it back to soccer, is, and I know it's a different case in England, but they've had almost no teams that have gone through quarantine end up having to send players home to quarantine again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting if the players themselves can be responsible, wear masks, and are doing a good job of social distancing besides when being around each other, because inherently in practicing lifting weights and those things, you're just going to have to be near each other. In meeting rooms, you're just going to have to sit near each other. But if they can limit it to that bubble, and then, they take off on a plane, go to, whatever town they got to go to, I don't think they're going to be staying in hotels this year. I don't remember what the discussion was on that, but I think they're going to do day of game traveling, which is going to severely hamper the away team. But
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
it is interesting to me I think people just we're kind of negative in America sometimes, and you don't look at how good other places have done stuff, like bringing sports back, and you're like, nope, we're not gonna be able to do it. It's shit here. We're not good enough. And it's like, well, the British Premier League, which is a professional sports league, but I mean, those rosters have 20 or 30 guys on them, 20 to 25, and they're all practicing around each other, and then you have the staff around them, and so yeah, it's not 160 guys, but anything can be scaled. If my job has taught me that, anything you can do once and replicate, you can scale it to do it multiple times and scale it to size. And so, it's interesting. I keep saying it's interesting. I got to come up with a new one, but it was interesting to me to look back when the Nebraska, I don't know if it was athletics or the football program, put out the video with Dave Ellis doing the pickup for the athletes, that they could come by while everything was fully shut down, and they had a system to get them meals, so they didn't have to go to grocery stores and interact that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it, with the UNMC being the Big Ten's, the medical center that they're working right alongside with, it seems like, and this has been the case that Bill Moose has said this, but that Nebraska's been ahead of the game. Number
Yes.
one, in the fact in the way they've handled it. Number two, in the way the state has responded to it, because outside of the counties where the meat packing plants are, largely Nebraska and Iowa have had the lowest numbers around.
Actually, Nebraska, not Iowa. Trust me, I see Iowa's numbers and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
But Iowa's way worse. But no, Nebraska, meatpacking plants, and Douglas County.
Yeah.
Outside of those, yeah, everything. Now, Lancaster County nowadays in part 2 of this first wave, starting to go up. The numbers are starting to get higher around here in the last 48 hours. But yeah, mostly across the rest of the state, with the measures that have been in place and the social distancing that has occurred through June, we were doing a good job. And I don't know if we're doing that same thing now, because again, I'm seeing numbers in Western Nebraska start to go up, and it's like, huh?
Yeah, but see, it just takes one person, right? It takes one person to pass it to one, and then that person passes it to 3, and then you've got the branch out again. Yeah, it's an interesting case. I think what's going to be interesting, and I sent this message to you. God, it had to be at 1:30 in the morning the other night, but it
Middle
struck
of severe weather coverage for me.
It struck me so.
What is he talking about?
Like, do you ever have that when you're trying to sleep and you just have a thought and you're like, I need to write this down. I need to tell it to somebody. Like, I'll never remember this. And you wake yourself up from almost being asleep to send that message.
That's right.
So the thought I had was, and this has nothing to do with, I'm not a prognosticator of these things. I don't really know. But if I owned a restaurant in Nebraska, I think the coolest thing, the best opportunity that restaurants have to try to recoup some of the losses that they're going to have from not having nearly as many people in their facilities, if any, during Husker game days, is make an at-home kit, right? Like, if I was, if my family lived out in Nebraska and the game was coming up on Saturday, I still want it to be an event, right? Like, I don't want to cook for it. I don't want to spend all Friday night cooking for it and put all that away and reheat it the next day. I don't want to wake up early. Yeah, you could do that, but there's going to be 10 to 12 games, and you're not going to want to do that every time. At some point, watching football is going to be a leisure activity. It should be an event, right? And so if I were a restaurant, I would make a point to put together some sort of a takeaway catering box. And I know Muchachos has done this. A couple different places have done this with like meal kits.
Yeah.
But do it specifically for game day. Have it have chips and salsa, have it have entrees, have it have guacamole, have it have this, that, and the other thing. And then if you're a bar in Lincoln, because they're allowing people to sell alcohol to go, set up pre-mixed cocktails in a mason jar, give them the amount of alcohol they need, tell them to add ice, and give them craft cocktails that they can go home, pour, done. That's it.
Some have already been doing, I think.
Right.
A couple of them in Lincoln, I know, have already been doing that.
But that's the thing for game day. I think that's the thing for the game day experience that these restaurants need to get on top of. And if you guys have Uber Eats out there, I really don't know if you do. I should look into this more.
Yes, we do.
So there's ways to fix the Uber Eats that you can add those options onto the Uber Eats. So you don't even have to leave your place to get this. You can have an Uber Eats courier bring it to you, would be an option. I do work for Uber. I am not saying this at all to try to promote it. You could use Postmates. You could use DoorDash, Grubhub. I don't care. But like, the idea is we're trying to keep these restaurants alive, is my thought. And, at some point, the human psyche of having to watch the game from home when you'd rather be there, you want it to be that event. And I think that's the thing that could change it. So I think it would kill two birds with one stone. It would give people that ability to feel like it's an event, not have to cook for themselves, make it a moment of leisure, and you would be helping a local business.
Yeah, that's well said. By the way, before we get back into the Husker schedule here.
Are we still going on that?
Baylor Shireman, Douglas. Baylor Shireman, the quarterback who is I don't know where he is now. It says he was on the 2019-2020 roster for South Dakota State. I don't know if that's still true.
Interesting.
That is the quarterback for Aurora. How we got that far into that, I don't know. I apologize to you. I apologize to those of you watching this.
Yeah.
It wouldn't leave me, and I wasn't going to let it go. Baylor Shireman.
I have never heard that name before in my life, so we're totally cool.
See, that's why. Aurora quarterback he was a senior 2018. Yeah, fall 2018. Aurora quarterback. Garrett Snodgrass was the quarterback for York in 2019. Now who's a Husker? Anyways.
I just don't think he was. He played running back and tight end.
No, that's not true. I'm telling you right now, that's not true.
All right.
Anyways, back to the Husker schedule and this possibility of that happening. Now,
Yeah.
as it stands, that's still it's Purdue and then Northwestern, Illinois, Rutgers, Ohio State. I should mention the road games. Road games at Northwestern, home game Purdue, Illinois, at Rutgers, at Ohio State, hosting Penn State, at Iowa, at Wisconsin, hosting Minnesota. Now, Douglas, I want to float this by you because Kevin Suits and I had a fantastic discussion about this. And one of these days,
hold on. Is the question, will Northwestern notice a difference in their attendance if they don't allow fans into the game? Is that the question?
No, that is not the question.
Okay, continue, please.
I was actually, since you're out there, you might know this. Have they installed real light posts instead of those crank ones that you and I witnessed when we were there in 2014? Have they planted them into the ground now, or are they still doing the old school?
Yeah, I've been up that way because I went up to Welsh Ryan Arena for the Husker basketball game that was there this year.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that day sucked. My parents were supposed to come into town to go to it with me because they're big Nebraska fans at this point. I would talk about it constantly, and they're forced to be now. Hi, Mom. And they were supposed to come, and they were like, no, we're not trying to drive through that weather. So I got a couple of buddies from work to just jump on the Purple Line with me and go up there. And I mean, we were walking backwards through the snow because it was blowing so hard in our faces that we had to walk backwards.
Remind you of something?
A little. A little. That trip up, I felt that area, that the football stadium, the basketball arena, that area had been niced up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That stadium is still there's high school
help.
football. There are high school football stadiums in Texas that are nice.
Yes, exactly. That don't have the hand crank to raise the light posts up into the ground on these machines. You can't install stadium lights? You have to bring them in and then crank them up into the air? Come on, this is Northwestern.
It is really funny because their football training facility is the best thing you've ever seen in your life. It sits right on Lake Michigan. It's made of all glass.
Yes.
It's the most beautiful facility you've ever seen.
It's incredible.
And then they show them where they're going to play. I'm sure when they bring recruits, they're like, yeah, this is where we train. The guy's like, yeah, where's the stadium? He's like, no, you don't need to see that. This is where we train.
Yeah, keep them away from
Yeah, don't show them where they're going to play.
Now,
they don't need to know.
I will say this. I know we're knocking on Northwestern right now, but Northwestern in the fall, you know it, Doug. I know it. I've got photo evidence of it. It is beautiful. Regardless
Chicago
of the
in the fall,
capacity, talk about that is gorgeous. It is so gorgeous, especially from up there in that press box.
I was going to say, people don't know this, but if you're all the way at the top of the press box and you stick your head out and look south, you can see straight down to the skyline.
That's
you can
the photo I have.
Sears, you can see the Sears Tower.
Yes.
And in front of you is the lake. So it's you have beautiful buildings, a little bit of a neighborhood, treetops over all of it, and a canopy. And then it's the lake in front of you as far as you can see out into your direct front. And then if you turn and look to the right, Chicago lays in the distance. And you've got the L going by. Yeah, it's good.
It's so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. Oh man. What I was gonna bring up, getting back to the schedule here
you
again.
And Kevin Suits talked about
Kevin Suits talking about this, and I thought that this was a very good idea and it solves the travel problem. But now that the Big Ten says, conference games only, if we even have a season at all.
Which I think is smart, which I'm on board for.
Yeah, I am too. I think, though, it would be smarter from a travel standpoint. Again, travel standpoint, this is why I say that. If you removed the conference-only situation, the conference-only umbrella, and just have Husker football playing teams within the region. Now, is that tricky for Nebraska? Yeah, kind of. It doesn't bring about as many good matchups, and it ends up turning into the old Big 12.
Well, that could
But
still.
I think that would be the more interesting. I think that would be interesting. It would make a season for Nebraska football where, now we only get Big Ten teams.
Yeah.
Well, what if you based it on travel and then you just turn it into that? I think that would make Nebraska football in a season and in a time where we really need some interesting things to not, we can never be pulled away from reality. I've said that so many times, but something to pull us away, to like just distract us for a little bit and make us fascinated with, wow, Nebraska's taking on Colorado, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Missouri, Iowa State,
I think that's interesting.
That's what
I think that comes a layer deeper than the conference level, right? So like had they gone, hey, we're not going to play non-con games, we're just going to play conference games. And then had, the Big Ten said, yeah, we're not going to do any of this. We're not going to be liable for anything at all going on in the football team, in the football world. We're just going to let the teams choose what they want to do. I think that's when it would have reverted to the locality.
Yeah.
I think another interesting idea for doing it would be to say, okay, the West teams, you're all going to play each other home and away, and that's your 10 games. And the East teams, you're all going to play each other home and away, and that's your 10 games or 12 games or whatever it would be. I think that would, because there's 14 teams, 7-7, year one of them, six games, 12.
So you
12
would
games.
either play 7 games or you would play.
No, you play 12.
Well, if you're
You'd
good,
play
if you do
6
the
opponents home and away. Yeah.
Yeah, if you would do that, but I don't know if if you're playing 12 games in a row, that's one bye week, right?
Sure.
Yeah, that's one bye week. So that could work.
I just think
work if you do it that way.
If there were more coronavirus concerns when we get closer to the season, that would be a way to restrict the total mileage that teams have to travel. And to go in, for Nebraska to have to go to Rutgers this year is like, Rutgers is ground zero for this in America.
And same thing for Penn State having to travel to Nebraska. You could subsequently do it the opposite way. You could bring in the virus and make it worse. Now, I'm not saying that Penn State is carrying the virus in middle of Happy Valley.
State colleges. Have you ever gotten to State College?
I have never been there. I've never been there.
You have to go considerably out of your way to get there. So it's not one of those places like
that
people go see.
Yeah.
Like Nebraska and Iowa are both right off of I-80. Whereas like Minneapolis, you have to take I-35 north. So for about 4 hours. So like major arteries through the country, which is I-80, I-70, all the big ones. Iowa, Nebraska, University of Illinois is a little bit off the beaten path. Northwestern is in a big city, but it's just interesting. Madison itself too. You and I, on that trip to Madison's out of the way. It's certainly not right there off the side of the road.
It's not easy to get to. You have to take only highways to get there, and it's not easy at all.
Yeah. So hopefully these places are like, these towns are a little more insulated from the effects of coronavirus than, the places like Rutgers and Maryland, which are obviously right outside of New York and DC. Northwestern obviously is in Chicago. So it is interesting. And I just do wonder, like, if you're going to go all Big Ten, does it make sense to just go the teams in your division, play each other twice, name a division champion, and they're probably not going to have a Big Ten championship like that. That's probably just out of the cards. So if it's all about naming a division championship, why wouldn't you just have your division opponents be who you play? Now, playing the same team twice in the same year within the same 10 to 14 weeks of each other, suck it up, deal with it. We get to watch football. Like, who cares, Yeah.
And it's, as I said earlier, as difficult as it is, it's also a transitional period for the players to get used to what a 16-week schedule is like in the NFL with only one bye week.
Right.
I
don't see them doing more than 12 games, because 12 is the normal amount, right? And if you had 6 opponents in your division, you played them each twice, that would get you to 12. That would be the maximum amount of games. I don't think there's going to be bowl games this year. It's just not smart. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way to make money off of it. You're not having it anywhere fans can be easily. Like, for a fan to travel to a bowl game, even if they were allowed in, what are they going to do? Go sit in the hotel for 2 days to wait to watch a game? It just doesn't make sense. So
I seriously think that we are looking at the possibility of, for the first time in forever, no bowl games.
I'm okay with that, though.
I'm not, because that's just like, it's so much fun. It's the end of the year. People are on vacation mostly. It's just it's just it's one little aspect of that 2-week holiday season period where it's the biggest time of the holiday season, and you get to throw in college football too. You've got basketball going on, which we have yet to get to.
We might have to do a round 2 at some point.
We do.
I don't know how much time we'll have left for basketball.
I know, yeah. We might have to save that for another time, because this is the main thing right now is football.
Yes.
But anyways, yeah, it would stink, but at the same time, like, you can't hold bowl games in the middle of a pandemic. That's just it's senile.
The other thing is, like, if you think about it, what wouldn't you give up as a part of the regular season, or as a part of something that's not the regular season, to have the regular season, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would give up the Heisman. I would give up all of the awards. I would give up the bowl games. I would give it all up if we just got to watch 10 games and they announced a winner of the division. Like, just to get to see the kids compete and get to watch 10 football games, and to know that the athletic department is making money so that we don't have to cut other sports at the university. Those are the things that I think are important.
Yeah.
Does any of the rest of it matter? No. Would I like to see bowl games because it gives me more football? Heck yes. Would I like to see – I think they'll still play the national championship. They'll still play the playoff of the 2 games than the 1. I still think that'll happen. I'm sorry. 4 games, right? 4, 2, 1? No, they're only at 4 now. So it's 2 then 1.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking too far in the future.
This is what it sounds like you're saying what you want versus what's actually going on.
I think they're still going to play the semifinal and the final, and then obviously the national championship, because you're crowning something. But a bowl game that doesn't really mean anything. Besides a trophy, if they get rid of that, it's sad, and it means we get less football. But if it means we get a regular season, done deal. Like, no brainer, it's really not that hard of a decision when I consider it.
I want to start wrapping the show up here, wrapping up this fantastic podcast with you bring up the the conferences, and I started thinking about, well, what if just for this pandemic, or just for this season during this pandemic, we just realigned the Division I schools into regions. Like, so Nebraska touches.
No,
hear me out.
It's not going to work, Ryan. It's business.
Nebraska.
Interest.
I know that, but Nebraska touches South Dakota, Wyoming, Colorado, Kansas, Missouri, and Iowa. So let's say I just came up with the list right here. 10 teams that Nebraska could play: South Dakota State, Iowa State, Iowa, Wyoming, Colorado, Kansas, K-State, Missouri, Minnesota, and Colorado State.
Boo.
I know, but Douglas, we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Boo.
Do you want football, or do you not want any football?
Ryan, this is like assuming that they have to take the Oregon Trail between locations. Like, they don't have to take the Oregon Trail between Lincoln and Iowa City. They don't have to take the Oregon Trail
to any of those places, though.
Like, they're getting on a hermetically cleaned charter flight that only has them on it, and they're flying into an airport where they get off a plane, don't even go through the airport, get on buses and get bused places.
Oh, forget the flight. You're just taking a bus to South Dakota State, to Iowa State,
have to
Iowa.
So say it's like Minnesota, and you just don't want to take a 7-hour bus ride, right?
Right.
What you have to do is clean a plane and clean 2 buses, and you're there. Like, I'm not saying it's that easy, but we're not talking about, like, the fact of getting to a place like Minnesota or Madison, or Northwestern's a little tricky because it's in Chicago and we're very densely populated. But
that's why I didn't include the state of Illinois. Only states that Nebraska touches.
But once you're on the bus and you're heading to the facility where you need to go, that point you have the Big Ten saying, okay, then it's just us having to make sure the locker room space is prepared, which another example to point to with the EPL, because the locker rooms are so small, there's no ability for social distancing. The players actually are using the suites. They're using like the luxury boxes, and like there's like 2 players per luxury box, and they're just up there changing into their uniform. I just thought that was funny. But just to find some sort of a locker room area to keep it clean, keep it socially distanced. Then once you're on the field, everyone's been tested as well as they can be. If you've been as careful as you can be and you've made every reasonable effort to be careful, and it's not going to be something that comes out in a documentary 10 years from now in all the ways the Big Ten wasn't careful. If you're actually being as thorough as they are being about this, I don't think it's that dangerous to travel when you have the resources to do it in such a way that these universities do. I just don't. You're not going to have the crowds around doing the unity walk. It's just going to be them. And they're already in their own bubble because they're already only around each other all the time. I love the idea of realigning conferences. I love the idea of realigning all of college football. I think there's a lot more interesting ways to do it than the way we currently have it.
Mhm.
And every single time I think about realigning any sport, I think about the promotion and relegation model in soccer, because I think it makes for the most competitive leagues in the world, because the bottom teams get dropped out of that league. So if you had it be a national college football system, the top 40 teams could be in tier 1, the next 40 teams in tier 2, the next 40 teams in tier 3, and the top 10 teams from tier 3 move up to tier 2 every year, and the bottom from tier 2 go back down to tier 3, and same with tier 2 and tier 1. And so if you're the first team at the top of tier 1, you're the champion. If you're the bottom 10 teams, you get moved down to tier 2. I think that provides the most amount of competitive balance, because you're going to be dealing with teams that roughly gain the same results you do. And then you go based off of a win-loss record with point differential and points for and points against point differential as the tiebreaker, because ultimately, if you're going to tie break anything in the sport, it's who scores the most and gives up the least. And if you score a bunch and you give up a decent amount, is your gap and your differential still good? I think that would be a fun way to do it. I also like your system of doing it regionally. But the thing is, in non-COVID times in the year 2020, 2021, whenever we get through with this, when there's a vaccine or when it's been eradicated or just dies off on its own, I don't think that's an option, but
Yeah.
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
We just don't live in a regional world anymore,
Yeah,
right?
no.
We live in
And
a
again,
national country.
I'm not saying that is a permanent solution. I simply bring up those 10 teams and just building a schedule for Nebraska based on that, because of the situation we're in.
Yeah.
We are in a time where, like, and this would be for Nebraska. Florida would have their own thing, and USC would have their own thing, and Washington, and Rutgers, and that's what it be, just because of the virus. Because we are so desperate. You and I, Douglas, we speak for so many people when we say we are so desperate for sports to be back. We want our regular dose of sports. Like, Doug, in a week, like next week, I was supposed to be in Chicago. It was supposed to be the first series, the Cubs and the Reds, after the All-Star game. My sister and I were going to be out there. I was planning on seeing you in person. It's so ironic that we're doing this right now, and like a week later is the time when I was supposed to be at Wrigley Field watching Cubs-Reds. And here we are because of this pandemic. Like, that's what's been taken away, and now, like, people are tired of having their sports taken away. And I tell you what, there are people who are wearing this shirt right now on a Saturday or on a Friday, whatever day it is, who are wearing this shirt, who are like, this team has to be on the field in the fall. And there are other people who have already resided to the fact that, I'm not expecting Husker football because we just can't corral this pandemic.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
I don't fall under that camp, but I do think what the Big Ten did yesterday when this is being watched, I will be meaning Thursday because we're recording this on Friday, obviously.
Mhm.
On Thursday, when the Big Ten decided we're going to go only Big Ten teams, that was the next domino to fall in the direction of eventually, if it keeps going, that we're going to go to, if the Big
Wiping
Ten
out the
says,
season.
okay, we can't sanction anything officially. If you guys want to go make TV deals and play some games, we won't consider it as a part of your record. The NCAA won't consider it as a part of your record,
Mm-hmm.
but you as an institution are free to do that. I think the decision by the Big Ten was to stave off those considerations from starting to bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Because what was going to happen if no decision was made is every decision was going to be thrown out there, and the one that gained the most traction was going to win. And I don't think the regional teams thing is that hard to consider. I mean, if you think South Dakota State, Wyoming, Montana, Iowa State.
Oh, not even that.
I'm
South
saying
Dakota
Montana
State,
because
Iowa
Montana's
State,
in the middle
Iowa,
of nowhere.
Wyoming, Colorado, KU,
Yep.
K-State, Missouri, Minnesota, Colorado State.
Yep.
Those
and
10.
if you were to say those 10, your argument would be they're close. And they're in places in the country where it's not particularly hard hit with coronavirus.
Mm-hmm. At least from Nebraska's standpoint.
Correct.
And a travel standpoint as well.
Correct. And so, it's very easy to spin the wheels on that idea and say it's good. But I don't think that idea is dead. I think that idea is just, in the event that what we've currently decided to do doesn't work, that's still a backup plan.
Mm-hmm.
And getting any amount of games officially in the books on the current TV deal is the best thing for Nebraska.
Oh yeah,
totally. Because it means we get to keep sports like track. It means, and I say we as I'm a supporter, and it's, I'm not a journalist covering the team, so I feel I can say we at this point. I'm just a fan. We as a university, we as a community, the sports that are more than just football mean a lot to Lincoln. Whether it's the little girls that get to go watch the Husker volleyball and get signatures.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that yet.
Yeah, and they get to grow up and want to be volleyball players. It's golf in Nebraska is getting bigger and bigger. They have 2 new golf coaches this year. Swimming and diving, I think, has gotten bigger. Gymnastics just got a new facility. It's every little thing that builds up a little part of that community that creates a new home for some kid who feels marginalized or misunderstood, that maybe that's the thing that they get. Maybe it inspires them to join that sport, and down the line they get to be a part of it. And you think about all the good that the athletics do, whether it's just providing entertainment, providing volunteer work, which I know all of Big Red Nation is really big on, is volunteer work. And so there's so many aspects that the athletic department touches. And if you think about the football team as the revenue generator, if for just 1 year you say the team's purpose right now is to ease suffering, which is to play, right, to give us entertainment, and to generate revenue to keep the athletic department alive, which Nebraska, as we know, has a very, very big war chest that's just sitting waiting. They have a great rainy day fund. Bill Moose will tell you. But if they don't get some football played, that is bad news bears, and that is absolutely not what anyone wants. So whether it comes down to Big Ten schedule where we add another East opponent, whether it comes down to Big Ten schedule where we play all division opponents, whether it comes down to a regional schedule like you've outlined, even if it's 6 games, even if it's Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa, Iowa State, South Dakota State, and Wyoming, even if it's the most immediate 6.
I'd say add Missouri, put Missouri in there.
Yeah.
Missouri's going to be looking at Nebraska like, hey, you guys are
right.
Columbia is not far away.
Right. There's just those considerations. Whatever the chance is to generate revenue playing this sport, that's going to generate more revenue in Lincoln, that's going to generate revenue through TV deals for the athletic department. Whatever the case is, and however they can do it safest to make the most amount of money and provide a product on the field, that's what I want them to do.
Exactly. But at the same time, you also have to think about, it's easy for golf and for NASCAR and for soccer to be able to handle everything with the coronavirus and testing and social distancing and all this stuff because of how small the rosters are. That's not the same case with Major League Baseball, with the NFL, with college football. Let's just call that football. Now, basketball, I would consider that in the same category as soccer. That's probably as big as you can go without running into like it's too big. And that's where I put Major League Baseball and I put football in there. Those two sports are just too big for you to be able to try and properly structure a safe environment that stops it from COVID from spreading without. Major League Baseball isn't even playing games yet, and we've got people testing positive all over the place.
Well, but I would say here would be, and we can almost wrap on this discussion topic, but and I think you're just going to agree with me, but I think there's 0% chance there's fans in the stands.
Oh, absolutely.
0% chance.
I haven't talked about it at least, but I think we haven't talked about it because that was already a given. Like, we're not even adding the fact this list right here is just like, so that way people can watch Nebraska football. I'm not even talking about going to Memorial Stadium and having almost 90,000 people, making the great noise that we have come to know and love over the course of our careers and our lives. Like, that can't happen. It's not going to happen. It won't happen. Like, forget it.
Leave it to the proclamation making Americans to like mid worst coronavirus weeks that we had be like, heck yeah, we're going to have a season. We're going to have fans in the stands. We're already selling season tickets. And it's like, really?
Tell me how that ends up for y'all.
That's what we're going to do. We're going to just like mid pandemic, mid lockdown, mid New York having its worst weeks of deaths, because that's at the same time period this was being discussed. Like, height of it in New York, still spreading throughout the U.S., and athletic directors out there like, yeah, you could still reserve your tickets. Like, for sure, we're going to have season tickets still available. We're going to have 40% capacity. You're going to have no capacity, guys. Like, it's just the case. There's no way to do that safely. I'm sorry. There's just not.
Especially now with the, part 2 of this first wave, it went like this, and now all of a sudden it's back up like that. In California, who was very strict on how they handled the coronavirus pandemic, they started to reopen. Boom, they're back where they were before, and probably worse off than they were. Houston, Texas, and the state of Texas as a whole. Florida, which has been asking for it, I'm going to tell you that. Like, take your pick. Take your pick. That's you see what happens when you decide that you're done dealing with this. The virus is not done. The virus is not a human being. It is a thing that has no human thought process. It just
it's nature. It's nature in its finest
what
form.
It wants. Yes.
Yeah. But I think there's an interesting thing lost in all of that. And it's just the distinction of what was the purpose of social distancing in the first place. Because if the idea was to social distance as strongly as possible and like just lock ourselves in our homes for like 14 days, we all failed at that. Like, all of us. Like, we did not do it strong enough like New Zealand did, or like Korea did. I'm sorry, South Korea did. We did not do it to that level, to where we were just like, hey, we're going to do everything we can to get it down to as few numbers as possible, find those people, lock them down for 14 more days, and then we'll all just be done with it. We won't let anyone in the country. Certainly that's not the way we went. So the strategy towards the social distancing, as we were told when it was happening, was to negate overcrowding hospitals, right? Have we successfully done that? Yes. What does it look like beyond that? No one ever explained that next step, right? No one ever said, hey, once we haven't overloaded the hospitals, this is the plan the rest of the way.
Because I don't think we have a full
understanding
of this virus, though. That's the thing. Like, this is something, and I strongly believe that some people don't care about this. Some people just don't understand. Like, we have never dealt with something like this ever.
Yeah, we have.
Like
Yeah.
me, like
A hundred years ago,
yeah,
right?
everybody's talking about the Spanish flu. Like, forget that. I don't think it's this. This is the equivalent of Spanish flu. I think this is the equivalent of the plague.
Yeah, but
That's
you
how
have
this is. Like, we
no.
have no
It
idea how to
is.
properly treat this,
It
and
is.
it's just gonna it's gonna take a long time for something the equivalent of the plague to wash over us. Like, it's
But
not gonna
wasn't,
be a few months. It's not.
yeah, but wasn't that the point with the Spanish flu, and the reason it didn't do what coronavirus is doing now is because they didn't have the international instantaneous day, 1 day international travel. And so when this all started in Wuhan and before it got noticed, there's such amazing amounts of travel in this world that people were just zooming all over the world, just this, that, there, and everywhere. And it was so hard to keep it contained and tracked. I think when they were dealing with, and I really haven't done my research on this, but I think that was part of the thing with the Spanish flu was it just wasn't like as much of wildfire when it released
Yeah,
because
you weren't having people traveling and stuff.
yeah,
it was
just
by
wasn't.
boat.
It wasn't nearly as much.
Douglas.
Yeah. There was actually a really great picture from the 1919 baseball season of all the players wearing masks.
Yep, everybody in the stands. I've seen it. No, I've seen it. I know exactly. There's another one too of people in the stands wearing all the white masks.
Yeah.
These white triangular masks over their face.
Love it.
Oh, that's powerful stuff. Douglas,
Are we there, buddy?
We're there. This has been probably I can't remember a time when I've had so much fun doing a podcast before. If I've ever done something like this, and you're not going to be the only one. I know, Devin Cleach, if you're still watching this podcast right now, you're next. I promise you, you are next. Other people I know are going to be next. Doug Lowery is not going to be the only
Devin, I hope to heck you're doing good. And if you've made it this far, you're a stronger man than I, because I was on this podcast and I'm not going to go back and watch it this far.
Yeah, I don't go back and listen to my stuff either.
No, gosh, no. I don't need to hear what I said.
Yeah.
And I, if Devin, if you're listening, I hope you're doing well, buddy. I forget. I heard you went to, I think, the Miami Dolphins.
I'll give you. No. I'll tell you exactly where he went. He went to the Minnesota Vikings for a year.
Yep.
Then after that, he got a job with Miami, the Miami Hurricanes. He was there for a couple of years. And now he is the head video coordinator for the University of Alabama, Birmingham.
Well done, Devin.
Devin
well
Cleach,
done.
everybody, is living the life. He might not be filming football this year, but
one of my favorite folks when we were back there in school. But yeah, get all sorts of folks on, and then once you've gone through them, come back to me, and you and I can have another chat.
We can. By that point, we might be in the hotbed of talking Nebraska men's basketball, which I know you are. I'll just throw that to you, and you. Oh man, give me an hour. I'll talk about that all day. That's Doug Lowery, everybody.
Brother, it is not a problem. You can. I'll hook you up with my parents if they caught any transcripts of me talking at dinner, because like my mom would know, like if she just wanted me to start talking so she could just eat for a while. She'd be like, "So how are the Huskers doing these days?" And I'd be like, "Well, the basketball team got this recruit, and the football team got that recruit, and this kid is actually injured, but he's going to be back for this week's." And I would just go on and on and on. But it was the only thing I had really going for me at the time. I mean, it was the middle of the winter. I was commuting an hour and a half each way every day, and it is what it is. Ryan, I think it's that time, brother.
Thank you, Douglas. This was great. I appreciate it. Doug Lowery, live from Chicago. Well, not live, but from his wonderful place in Chicago with that amazing background. Gosh, I need to get back there. I have forgotten sometimes how great Chicago is. Such a beautiful city.
Hey, I will be a better and better tour guide every passing day that goes by.
I bet.
I learn another inch of this city. So it's
go.
funny. I was from here. I always said I was from here, but I was from the suburbs. And so it's good that I'm finally learning the city well enough that if someone asks me directions or where a key location is, I can actually be like, oh yeah, you go there. Before, like when I first moved down here, it's like, oh, how do I get there? Oh, use your phone. Like do whatever. Now I'm getting a hang of it finally. So
there you go.
Actually, interestingly, where's my hand? Nope. There, right there, behind that building is the building I work in.
Nice.
Yeah. Oddly enough.
That's great. Doug Lowery, everybody. You all know who I am. Another great episode of Delay of Game, and we will see you. And the dog will probably will see you as well.
Apollo
next
had
week.
to chime in.
Yes, he did. He's been chiming in the whole time. We'll see you next week, everybody.